Today's Iraqi Dinar update brings a real and significant development out of Baghdad. But there is one detail viewers need to understand before drawing conclusions. This is not a revaluation announcement. And no new exchange rate has been activated. What is actually happening is a renewed government debate over deleting zeros from the dinar, and it is tied directly to a serious budget crisis. Let's separate what is confirmed from what is still just talk. On Monday, a member of Iraq's Parliamentary Finance Committee, Ahmed Rashid, confirmed to The National that a plan to delete zeros from the Iraqi dinar is now being actively discussed inside the Central Bank of Iraq. His words matter here, so let's be precise. He said these are just discussions so far, and that they have not risen to the level of a legal proposal. No draft law has reached Parliament, and it has not even had a first reading. At the same time, he said the discussions are serious because there is a clear rationale behind them right now. That same day, a different official gave a much more definitive statement. Iraq's Minister of Communications, Mustafa Sanad, told a local television channel that the decision to delete the zeros and change the currency has been made. He linked the move to both the economic crisis and the government's ongoing anti-corruption campaign. And he suggested the process could begin as early as 2027 and take 3 years or more to complete. He even said the new banknotes would likely be printed abroad, possibly in Britain. Here is where the situation becomes more interesting. Hours later, Iraq's government spokesman, Haider al-Abudi, pushed back on state television, denying that any decision had been taken by the cabinet. He said the matter falls under the authority of the Central Bank of Iraq and ultimately needs parliamentary approval. As of now, the Central Bank of Iraq itself has made no public comment. So what does that leave us with? 2 sitting officials giving contradictory signals, one describing an active, serious internal discussion with no timetable, and one describing a done deal that could start next year. The government spokesman denies a cabinet decision exists at all. That is not a confirmed government policy. That is a live political and economic debate, and viewers should treat it exactly that way. Before going further, there is a distinction that matters enormously here, and it's one this channel returns to often because so much confusion online stems from ignoring it. What is being discussed is redenomination, not revaluation. Redenomination means changing the numerical structure of a currency, in this case, reportedly deleting 2 zeros from the dinar, so that prices and notes carry smaller numbers. It does not automatically change the real purchasing power or international value of the currency. Revaluation is a completely different concept, an official increase in a currency's value relative to other currencies. Nothing announced this week involves the Central Bank of Iraq revaluing the dinar. If a headline uses RV language to describe this story, treat that with caution, because that is not what Iraqi officials are actually describing. Now let's get into why this debate has resurfaced now. Because the reasoning behind it is genuinely important for understanding Iraq's financial position. This is not a new idea. The Central Bank of Iraq first floated the concept of deleting zeros back in 2011, aiming to simplify transactions and combat inflation. That plan was shelved amid political instability, the war against ISIS, and falling oil prices. Even before that, a version of the idea was floated as far back as 2003, during the tenure of the U.S. Civil Administrator Paul Bremer, and it has resurfaced repeatedly since without ever being implemented. So Iraqi dinar watchers have legitimate reason to be cautious about timelines. Given this 2-decade pattern of proposals that stall, what's different this time is the scale of the fiscal pressure behind it. Iraq's federal budget depends on oil revenue for roughly 90% of its funding. That revenue has been hit hard by disruptions tied to the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, which cut into Iraq's main oil export route. Exports that stood at around 3.4 million barrels per day collapsed when conflict began in late February. And while they have partially recovered to around 2 million barrels per day since early August, the damage to government income has been severe. Oil revenue reportedly fell from about $6.8 billion in February to roughly $2.3 billion by May and June, at a time when Iraq is spending an estimated $6.5 billion a month just on salaries, pensions, and social welfare. Iraq has also reportedly struggled to keep up with public sector salary payments in recent months as a direct result. That fiscal squeeze is the real engine behind This renewed currency debate, and it connects to a second, long-standing structural problem in Iraq's economy: an enormous amount of cash sitting entirely outside the formal banking system. According to Mr. Rashid, roughly 70 trillion Iraqi dinars, more than half of the estimated 125 trillion dinars in circulation, currently sit outside monetary authority control. Iraq remains a heavily cash-based society. Years of war, sanctions, and past banking scandals have left deep public distrust of financial institutions. So millions of Iraqis keep savings at home in safes buried or otherwise hidden rather than depositing them in banks. Officials argue this idle cash limits the government's ability to conduct effective monetary policy and helps fuel the black market for dollars. This is where the anti-corruption angle comes in, and it's a notable part of this story. Minister Sanad connected the currency overhaul directly to Iraq's ongoing anti-corruption drive, which has already resulted in seizures of tens of millions of dollars in cash and dozens of kilograms of gold in recent weeks. His argument is that forcing old notes out of circulation through a redenomination process would require hoarded and undeclared cash to be brought into the formal banking system to be exchanged. He put the specific figure of undeclared, unaccounted for cash at around 8 trillion dinars, arguing that if that money is never handed in, it functions the same as the government quietly losing that value altogether. That is a strong political argument for redenomination, but it is also, again, a proposal, not a finalized, implemented policy. Let's turn to the exchange rate itself, because that context is essential and often gets lost in translation when this kind of story spreads online. The Central Bank of Iraq's official exchange rate has remained fixed at 1,300 to 1,310 dinars per US dollar, a peg that has been in place since February 2023 and was reaffirmed for Iraq's 2026 federal budget. That is the official rate used for documentary trade, government transactions, and formal banking channels. It has not changed. The parallel market rate, the cash rate you'd see quoted on the street in Baghdad, Erbil or Basra, is a different figure entirely, and it has been trading noticeably weaker. As of mid-August, parallel market dollar rates were trading around 154,500 dinars per $100, compared to the central bank's official rate of 131,000 dinars per $100. That gap, close to an 18% premium, reflects tighter cash dollar liquidity in informal trading channels rather than any change to Iraq's actual monetary policy. This is a normal and recurring feature of Iraq's dual exchange rate system, not evidence of a hidden new rate or a secret revaluation. And it should not be interpreted that way. So, what does this actually mean for the dinar? And what doesn't it mean? It means Iraq's government is once again seriously discussing a mechanical restructuring of its currency's numbers, driven by real fiscal pressure and a genuine desire to pull hoarded cash into the formal system. It does not mean a new international exchange rate has been set, activated, or secretly communicated to banks. It does not mean the dinar's global value is about to jump. And it does not mean any implementation date is locked in, by the most optimistic official telling the story. 2027 is only a possible starting point for a rollout that could take 3 years or more to complete. And by the more cautious telling, there isn't even a bill in front of Parliament yet. There is currently no verified official timetable. And there's no confirmation from the Central Bank of Iraq itself, which has stayed silent on this specific story so far. That silence matters. When the institution with actual authority over currency policy hasn't spoken, any claim about lock dates or guaranteed outcomes should be treated as unconfirmed. Here's what Iraqi Dinar watchers should be paying attention to going forward. First, watch for any official statement directly from the Central Bank of Iraq, since it is the institution with legal authority here, not individual ministers speaking to television channels. Second, watch whether a formal draft law actually reaches Parliament for a first reading, which would mark a real escalation from discussion to legislative process. Third, keep an eye on Iraq's oil export volumes and revenue figures, since the fiscal pressure driving this whole debate is directly tied to how much oil Iraq can get to market amid ongoing regional disruptions. Fourth, watch the spread between the official and parallel exchange rates. since a narrowing gap would suggest improving confidence in official channels, while a widening gap suggests continued cash dollar stress. And fifth, watch for any further comments from the government spokesman's office, since the public disagreement between ministers this week suggests this issue is still being worked out internally before Baghdad presents a unified position. To summarize where things actually stand, Iraq is discussing, at a serious but preliminary level, a plan to delete zeros from the dinar as part of a broader response to a severe budget crisis and an anti-corruption push targeting hoarded cash. This is redenomination, not revaluation, and conflating the two misrepresents what officials are actually proposing. No law has been submitted to Parliament. No implementation date is confirmed. The Central Bank of Iraq has not issued a statement. The official exchange rate remains unchanged at its long-standing peg, and the parallel market premium reflects ordinary cash liquidity dynamics rather than any secret policy shift. Viewers should watch official CBI channels, parliamentary activity, and Iraq's oil revenue trends for the next real signals on where this goes. This video is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not financial advice. Currency markets can change, and viewers should verify important financial information through official and reputable sources before making financial decisions.